So we started off this morning talking about cybersecurity, and I told you we had a panel that we were putting together, and I've worked hard to get them to sit in the order that the screen is, so you'll know who they are right by their picture in here. I told them, come on up, panelists. There we go. Wrong order. There we go. Yeah. Fred always wants to be the guy in charge. Just saying.
That's my chair.
See? All right, let's try that one more time. Off stage, let's do it again. All right, no. All right, as we were talking about earlier, and even on the last panel, a lot of people think as we move forward, technology just keeps getting more and more and more, not only important, but involved in how you do your business, right? I've had the privilege of knowing everybody on the stage for quite a while, a couple of them for a really long time. I've known Tracy since 1990. We were both working at Metropolitan. I met Fred shortly thereafter that when he joined Metropolitan. And then I've met Rick and Richard and Ray ever since they've been part of the Note School group. And one of the best parts is they're actively involved in the business. And they realize if I'm going to be actively involved in the business, I got to find a way to scale my business. And technology is going to be what takes me there. Okay? So Rick and Tracy have been running online trading platforms, PaperStack and NotesDirect. And Richard and Ray have come up with some workflow process, and Fred has been in the marketing aspect of the business and all different kinds of arenas. So he's kind of got a global view of how all this, and obviously being married to Tracy, he hears all about the growing pains of NotesDirect during that time. So, I know the slide says that Tracy is with Diversified Investment Services, which is true. She's had that company for a long time. She is transitioning out of her role as project manager for NotesDirect, but has promised to represent us well here on the panel here. We appreciate everything that she has done for us. What was it, a year and a half? 2 years? 2 years? To get us at the point that we're at. But you'll see her and Fred in their Note Investing Tools booth down there. And Rick and his team, Richard and Christine, and Ray and Yakov have their own booths down there as well. So after the panel, after our note talks, after here, and we do our welcome reception, and all day tomorrow during the exhibit hall, if you haven't already, make sure you go by, say hello to these guys, check out the platforms that they have, the tools they have that can help your business, and we'll go from there. So I told you guys I'd let you introduce yourself, give you a minute or so. You can see the clock, it's already ticking. Alrighty. So Rick, why don't we start with you?
My name is Rick Allen. As Bob said, I am a member of Note School. Been a member with Eddie 6 or 7 years. A while ago, we started, my partner TJ and I came up with an idea to come up with a trading platform. And we thought that there was a lot of issues in the industry that could be solved with technology. So we set out on an adventure, and after 4 or 5 years, here we are with a trading platform. We think it's pretty good, and we're hoping to see you guys down there at our booth.
Excellent. We are friendly competitors in the trading platform space. As Bob mentioned, I've been buying and selling notes since the late 80s, and I've always been fascinated and excited about the opportunity to trade notes online. And Eddie and Bob and the group had already started NotesDirect when I came along, but my role was to expand it and bring on more retail users and bring on third-party sellers so that we had a wider array of assets to present. And so I'm here in that role, and it's been a fun, exciting time. It's great to see where the note business is going.
Hi, my name's Richard. I came on with Note School about 3 years ago, and my goal at the end of my first year was to have 80 notes, and I didn't get there. We're not quite that far, but what I wanted to do as part of that, in order to get there, I knew I needed to have systems, and so I started working on a CRM right away. I started with a CRM called Zoho. Eddie talked me into moving over to Podio, but we've been using that system now for about 2.5 years, and we manage your note business with you, help you figure out what your next steps are and what to work on next.
Hi, I'm Ray. Been part of Note School for coming up on 4 years now. And when I started out in the audience there with you guys, I really struggled with the due diligence aspects. You know, I was opening up, I don't know how many websites to gather pieces of. I'm an engineer by trade, if you don't know that by now, but so I was always looking for information, open up, I don't know, 10 different websites to get to my information, and I get to a point where I feel like I can pull the trigger on the note, and I go back to the platform. Sorry, no longer available. Okay, so I said, I gotta come up with a better solution. How can technology help me? So I do a lot of data aggregation on notes. I pull a variety of demographic, market value, market rent information on our portal to kind of help me make an informed investment decision. So that's really was my motivation personally. And then I said, hey, this could be a value add to folks out here in the audience as well. So look forward to meeting you guys down at our booth downstairs. But yeah, that's my story.
My name is Fred Rui. I started in the note industry in 1991 when I was 4 years old. And that's such an old joke. Anyway, I was actually just trying to find a way to buy property. There's a gentleman by the name John Richards back then that actually was teaching the note industry, and he kind of took me under his wing, and I followed him around like a puppy dog everywhere he went until he taught me the financial calculator, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world. And now, because I'm a huge technology geek, I tend to focus more on the front end and lead acquisitions and sellers and the mentality behind sellers and how that may have changed over the years from when we first started. So I'm predominantly more front end oriented than I am closing.
Awesome. All right, very good. So as you can see, we've got a diverse panel up here, coming from different backgrounds. Rick, you kind of touched on it initially here. You and TJ got in the business. What was the driving factor to say, hey, we really need to develop an online trading platform?
So we started on a trade, and we had $250,000 out with an unknown person we didn't know that was the escrow agent, and they were telling us the due diligence files were sitting in Dropbox, and they weren't in Dropbox. They were actually in something called Box, and there was this big miscommunication. We thought we'd gone past our inspection period or our due diligence period, and we thought we'd lost $250,000 on our first big trade, so that made us sweat a little bit. And then when we got the collateral files in, one of them, the only original document was the lost note affidavit. And we said, oh boy, this isn't good. So fortunately it came out okay, but after that trade, we said, we need to fix this problem. A lot of this could be solved with technology. So we started outsourcing, development overseas and got back not spectacular code. And from there, we brought in some real home run hitters on the development side and really got serious about PaperStack. So it was a combination of, us wanting to put our end product as a reperforming loan, and we wanted a place to put it out to the retail market. That and the whole, collateral file issue is what really spurred it.
Awesome. Tracy, you had said you started this in the late 1980s. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Al Gore hadn't developed the internet yet at that point, right?
That's safe to say, yeah.
So you sourced inventory a lot of different ways before online trading platforms. How have you seen it evolve, and why do you think the online trading platform is going to continue to grow in this space?
Well, there are a lot of people out there that would like to buy a note in a retirement account, a self-directed retirement account, or other vehicle, that they don't have the time or the energy to, or they don't want to make it a business to go find notes, to go source notes. So an online trading platform provides an opportunity for them to review assets, just like the MLS does for real estate. These trading platforms do for real estate notes. So it allows access to capital, and it allows people selling notes access to capital as well on both sides. It's very streamlined. They have all kinds of, for you to go out and market direct to sellers, as we do, to be able to pull up 200 notes and pick and choose would take, with all of that information available, would take a year probably for most people. So you have all kinds of opportunity by logging into an online trading platform.
Awesome. Richard, what was the impetus behind Note Rules?
Yeah, so I was here, I think it was June of 2018 at a summer summit. I think it was June. And Eddie had us all break up into these little groups of 8 or so people and talk about what's going well and what's not going so well in the group, and then come back and present out to the whole team on what's happening. And I was sitting there as we're watching these different groups report out and hearing the people that I met with, and the common thread was, I'm having a hard time keeping everything organized. I've got so many notes, I'm not quite sure what's going on. I don't know which ones are paying and non-performing, who the servicer are, who's mowing lawns, when it's due. And I kept thinking, but this isn't really a problem. Why are they having difficulty in this area? And then I thought, oh, they don't have the software that I put together. They don't have what I built. And that's when I talked to Eddie about it, and he said, yeah, but you need to do it in Podio. And we're gonna go to Podio. So we went to Podio, and that's kind of how I got started.
Awesome. Ray, what was behind Note Unlimited?
Well, like I said earlier, I mean, it was really to solve my problem initially. As I started with note investing, I got overwhelmed with data, and I, rather than pass that data by and just make a decision, I felt I needed to do more and more research on these notes before I can make a decision. So, you know, it really was a personal thing of me trying to find a better solution to inform myself to make a buying decision. And then that just naturally evolved to something that I said, hey, you know, it's working for me, it's helping me in my business. It could be a value add to others, and that's how I started the Note Unlimited.
So you were kind of suffering from the paralysis of analysis?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Fred, talk a little bit about, you have a Note Investing Tools website, and I know you've got plenty of a library full of resources on there. What was kind of the thought behind building that?
You know, mostly the marketing side for us, especially on the websites and everything and the social media, was by, same thing as what Ray was talking about, is by necessity. We were a very early adapter of the internet, you know, pre-2000, and it was a complete experiment that we had no idea if it would work. I mean, the idea, especially back then, I mean, and it still is a people business, but the idea that someone would submit, you know, fill out a form online or something like that, that was very foreign, and honestly, I'm glad I was almost against it in the beginning. I just didn't think it would work, and it did, and ended up being a huge source of business. So as we progressed and we built and we were building websites, then it's a question of, well, what do you do with those people when you have them? What do you do with those leads? And what does that contact look like online, which was mentally very different than being offline. And then out of necessity, same thing that happened to us, is that, you know, we were paying web people a whole lot of money back then to make a stupid little change on a website. And so at one point we just kind of got up and said, you know what, I think we can do this, or at least hire the people to do it and bring it in-house. So that's how that division whole started, and then we started being able to supply tools to others at a reasonable price.
Awesome. And I'll piggyback a little bit on that with the creation of Notes Direct. At Colonial, we did it out of necessity, right? We had assets in our capital fund that we wanted to sell on a regular basis, and we were doing it, sending out a spreadsheet to people, having them bid on loans. We'd have to figure out who was bidding what, who was the highest bid. They get in by the deadline, how that was going, and inefficient is probably not even close to how bad it was. And we decided that there had to be a better way, and we went with the online trading platform. It was a huge capital expenditure to come up with that, not only to create it, but then, how many you guys know, once you create it, it's time for an update the next day, right? So, you know, we have to have a continuous development team, which is why I really think Tracy's transitioning off dealing with our development team, because it's a never ending. They fix one thing, break two more, and then here we go, right? But I think you heard from all of us up here that, one, we needed a necessity because it impacted our business. And two, we knew that everybody else out there was also being impacted by that. And whatever we had, we could scale it and let other people benefit from it as well. And we all look for ways, obviously, to monetize that, to pay for the development cost and so forth. So that's kind of the background of that. And I want to jump to, since we started off this morning with our keynote on cybersecurity, and one of the points that Brian made was not only to make sure you guys are preventing yourself from a cyber attack, but how about some of the vendors that you use, right? So if you do business on Notes Direct, if you do business on PaperStack, if you do business on Note Unlimited, Note Rules, Note Investing Tools, you know, what are they doing to make sure that they are protecting not only your data, their data, other people's data? I know on Notes Direct we have our data, and then we have the customer's data, and then it compounds it even further, Tracy, when we have third-party data. So I'll start with you talking about some of what protections we put in place, and then we'll go down the line. Just give everybody some comfort as to what you've put in place to not only protect the global structure of your platform, but their data and privacy information.
Well, you definitely want to have an SSL certificate, and then you want to have nightly backups, and you need to do security scanning on your websites and on your databases. And then, of course, in addition to the backups, we allow people to be able to download copies of the files, the collateral files, and the spreadsheet information. And then even when somebody buys an asset, then we're sure to keep that information as a backup, because we do have people come back and say, oops, we forgot to download that or keep a copy. Is that available? So we also make that available.
Yeah, this is a great question, and something that we thought about highly when we started developing this. And I wish Mike were here because I'd lean on him. He's our developer. But I don't know if you guys heard. There's this company out there who this is where we keep our data, and if they get hacked, we're in trouble. It's Google, the Google Cloud. And so there's actually no data stored on our website. We use a serverless cloud to store everything. There's, we could go into SSL, WebSockets, and I could bore you guys to tears with the details. But that was a huge thing, to the point where we've got billion-dollar funds who are starting to list assets billion with a B. And their biggest issue coming onto the platform is they're worried about headline risk. And so we had to jump through a lot of hurdles, redacting PII, personal identifiable information, becoming as close to GLB compliant without saying you're GLB compliant as possible. And to have those clients or those enterprise level people who are billion-dollar funds, they bought $1 billion, sold $1 billion on our platform, kind of speaks to the level of security that we have as a platform.
Very good.
Yeah, so when I was first thinking about putting together a database software that would allow people to put their data on my system, I decided that even though I'm an engineer and I've been writing software for 30 years, I didn't want to solve that problem. So that's why I went with a professional CRM and Podio. They're based on Citrix. There's 100 million users on their platform, and Citrix is one of the biggest companies in this space. So like PaperStack on Google, mine's on Citrix. I'm not too worried about security because they have a huge problem if anything gets out. Obviously, everything's HTTPS and SSL and all that, but data is very much secured.
Yeah, so one of the things that actually keeps me up at night is keeping track of information and data, right? So one of the things that we were saying, hey, maybe we can store some of the collateral information on our portal. So, no, I don't want to go there. Let's figure out, the evaluation and analysis pieces, and let other companies like, Dropbox worry about security of the collateral files, or I don't mind doing integrations along those lines. And we took the same approach when it came to subscription. We don't want to hold credit card information on our databases. We let companies like PayPal, who are in the business, tried and true, who've done this for a number of years. So we try to steer clear of all that as much as possible. And as mentioned earlier, we want to leverage companies who've done this and done this in the past successfully.
We're pretty much the same way. I mean, a lot of people already mentioned, SSLs and things like that. If you're on a site and you're transferring any information, it doesn't say it's not an SSL, HTTPS on there, then you probably need to get off or not be transmitting any data, especially in this day and age. Used to be an optional item, certainly not anymore. Same thing, email, like credit cards for things like that. I don't know your credit card number. I know the last 4 digits, that's it. So we've always tried to maintain best practices on anything we do there. We don't spam anybody. Or anything like that. So we just always maintain best practices. And most of our data is all cloud-based. And anything anybody creates as far as websites, they own the website. They can change the passwords, and I don't have access to them.
Yeah, I think the best thing is, I think you've heard from everybody, when you're building a platform like this, there is inherent cost that you have to take on in order to have these protections. I mean, to Rick's point, NoteExpo is also having large capital funds post third-party assets on our site. And on the first swing, they sent over a 200-page or 200 questionnaire that we had to fill out, which had so much lingo on there that I didn't know what it was talking about. I was like, forget it, we're out. And Tracy's like, no, we're not out. We need to figure it out. luckily, we had a good relationship with them, and we were able to get with them and their servicer and kind of wind it down to a smaller version, put in a couple other tweaks for them, and able to poach their assets. So to your point, it does speak large that they're confident enough that you will protect that data. And then for you guys on a smaller scale, I know a lot of you guys are out there soliciting business, trying to sell assets or whatever, but you guys need to follow the same privacy and protections that large platforms do. I can't tell you the number of times I get emails of somebody trying to sell a loan that's got some data on there that I'm like, really? They should not be providing people with that data. So, Ray, you kind of brought this up earlier about what keeps you up at night. You want to expound on that before I move to the rest of the folks?
Yeah, I mean, again, we take the data security seriously. Note information that people upload to our site, they're trusting us with that information. So, what keeps me up at night is making sure that data is protected, that we can reproduce that data on a dime if we need to, if we lose it. Comes to, the comments that were made earlier with Tracy about backups, backing up your system, backing up your databases on a regular basis. So those are the kinds of things, you are entrusting information on my portal, so I want to do everything that I can to ensure that that's protected and that's available to you at all times.
Richard?
What keeps me up at night?
Absolutely.
Oh boy. Just being relevant, I think, in this space. There's so much changing. Like you said, that's why we're having this panel. There's a lot happening. Last year, I was the only software vendor. I think there was Revival Brothers here. This year, there's 3 of them up here, right? And more, right? So, yeah, it's changing. And how do I stay relevant in this space? I think super important.
Okay. Tracy, what keeps you up at night?
Honestly, the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, that's who keeps me up at night. And I've done everything all my life to keep my nose clean, knock on wood, and I will continue to. But to back up your point, and one of the things we've been very careful with on Notes Direct is that you're placing one asset with one investor. You're not soliciting funds in general. If you post an asset, you're posting a specific asset, not trying to get people to invest in a fund on the internet or promise returns. And so I see a lot of this going on out there, as Bob does, and it concerns me that people don't realize, they don't know what they don't know. So you're here, become educated, because if you didn't even know what SEC was, then you should become aware.
That's a great point. SEC is, it kept me up for a while, and then we got our fund launched, and they approved us, so that was good. Really, it is the future of where we want to take PaperStack is the biggest thing. We have, some would say, wild aspirations of the stuff with machine learning, with, enterprise-level transactions. So that's the kind of more so engineering or crafting, architecting the future of the note space and continuing to help grow really the online marketplace for notes, because I think we can all agree that's where the future of note investing is going to be the online marketplace. In talking with some of those large capital funds, these are the conversations they're having. They say, $400 million trades are not going to take place on email. And so we're trying to figure out how can we facilitate those.
Fred, what keeps you up at night?
I'm not a stressful person. It's mostly this trend for plant-based burgers, actually. I'm just concerned I'm going to have one by mistake. No, I think I get up. I'm a super early person. So, me from the front end and being a systems person from front end and funnels, and also the big educator side of it, I'm constantly looking for ways to make things simpler. Whether it's a front-end part of funnel of getting a person from considering selling a note to selling a note, or someone in the room that has not pulled the trigger. It's funny because I look at this industry and, we've been in it for a long time now, and we can explain this industry to somebody in 30 seconds, but we can't execute it in 30 seconds because it's a paper business, and we tend to make it more complex than it is. And we look at people that haven't done a deal, that have all this educational material available to them. I'm like, I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. I'm ready to. So I'm constantly looking at ways, because I see how everybody gets distracted. So I'm constantly looking for what can we strip out of there and make it, from zero to first note. Because once you do your first note, you'll do your second, you'll do your third. So it's getting past that barrier of the first couple, because then everybody sees it and they see all the strategies and they know it's there. But how do we make it simpler for everybody?
Good. What I mentioned on the last panel was how everybody who was up here, we were all counterparties, we did business together, and that holds true on this panel here, right? I see us all collaborating to make that process better. We talked to PaperStack about collaborating with Notes Direct, but just if you because just to give PaperStack some free press, when he was talking about, one reason we started PaperStack was because I sent $250,000 somewhere sitting in an escrow account. Right? Wasn't really sure where my money was going and if I'd get it back or if I was going to buy notes. He focused on, I'm going to make sure that escrow and closing and funding piece of his platform was rock solid. And that's key. And we like it at Notes Direct, and that's why we want to collaborate with these guys. But you can take it right down. Fred and their product can help generate the marketing and the leads and getting the buyer and the seller together, right? Ray and his product can help with the due diligence, scraping and aggregating the data to make a business decision and forecast your exit strategy, right? Then you come to one of our online platforms and you buy the asset, fund it, and Richards helps you track it and service it and get all your management together and do all that. So Richard, you were the only one, and now there's 5 or 6, but there's really no competitors, right? You can't say, oh, I'm going to buy Ray's instead of Richards, because they do completely different things, right? You guys got to figure out what do you already have in place and which one of these may plug in, or maybe you need everybody, right? But that's the key, is trying to leverage your scalability. Fred made a great point. I mean, a lot of times the barrier to entry is that first note. Getting somebody to stop what Ray was referring to earlier of paralysis of analysis and pulling the trigger and buying a deal. But having the comfort level of knowing they have the collateral file, the seller's been vetted, and I've got a system in place to track it after I buy it should help with that peace of mind, and then keep that marketing funnel going to get note number 2, note number 3, and so forth. So as I did with the panel earlier, I asked these guys to send me a question that they would like specifically to them. I'm not going to do that. I am going to do that. So I know some of these you probably have already sort of addressed, but you can drill down a little ways. Ray, I'll start with you since you got yours in last. I mean,
You have to advertise that?
let me ask the question so they know what it is. I know you know the question, but they, right? Right? I was like, that's not the question you wanted me to ask.
Oh, black.
Yeah, so Ray slipped me a note after the keynote, said, here, I got my question now. So what are some ways that folks may protect themselves from cyber attacks?
So a number of points were kind of highlighted in a general level at the opening talk today, but I wanted to kind of give you guys some real practical steps that you can then come Monday morning and take. Okay. So one of the things that I do myself as a platform provider is I subscribe to a number of newsletters. Okay. Specifically around in the cybersecurity space, there's SANS. I don't know exactly. SANS, I believe .org is a newsletter that I subscribe to. There's a Friday 5, I believe, is another newsletter that I subscribe to. So I'm constantly. Not only am I educating myself on the note investment side of things, but I'm educating myself now that I'm a provider of service. I'm educating myself on cybersecurity and what are some of the new trends or some of the new cyber attacks that are being used against me and against my platform. So education is one of them. So subscribe to a newsletter. Go out to the internet and do a search on cybersecurity. Subscribe to a newsletter of your choice and follow it and read that on a regular basis. The other thing, and I want to emphasize is if you have a relatively, whether it's a 2-man operation or a 3-man operation, or you're up to maybe a 50-man operation. Have a security policy. Write some of these things down. Frequently request your educate your folks on phishing attacks, ransomware, things of that nature. Create how we say, suspicion, okay, when people are receiving emails and those sorts of things, and educate them on a regular basis. I've been in the corporate world. I've been in a lot of companies, and they required me to take a security training on an annual basis. Okay, they would lock me down. I would not be able to log into the corporate network unless I completed my training. Okay, I'm not saying that you want to take those kind of draconian measures to your employees, but it's something you should consider, right, on a regular basis. The other thing I'm going to say is, a lot of people have a lot of sensitive information. Back it up. I'm going to show here a little USB. I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to say it. USBs. USBs. You can throw a ton of information on those USBs. Go to your bank and throw it in one of those security vaults, and that's protected, right? If all hell's breaks loose, and everything burns down to the ground, you at least have something that you can go back to and restore if need be. Okay. And then the last thing, and I think that I can speak for all the folks that are on this panel. Work with trusted vendors. Work with people who stand behind their platforms.
Very good. Thank you. Fred, certainly heard a lot about technology help us list, track, close notes. How have you seen technology affect the sellers of notes?
The sellers are different. There's three things basically on the seller side right now. And part of me, when I look at like the platforms and everything like that, I'm like looking at the audience thinking, man, you kids don't know how good you have it. Because back then we didn't have that. The opposite is true when it comes to the sellers and our referral sources. So as far as the seller mentality changing over the last, at least in my scheme, 25 years, first off, they're aware. Back when I first started buying notes, the seller a lot of times didn't even know they could sell a note, let alone that there were other people out there buying notes. And it was a really good time to buy notes because the discounts were greater. They didn't know anybody else. They only knew you. So we were getting much better discounts and not having to step over each other. With that said, I think competition's good. The second part of that is a website. I don't care what side of the business you're on. I don't care if you're buying notes, selling notes, looking for investors, flipping, investing, buying property, whatever. You absolutely need a web presence. It's not an option any longer. It's not like the internet's coming and going. It's definitely not going anywhere. If you do not have some sort of web presence, I guarantee you've left money on the table because someone has tried to check you out. Doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to be expensive. It's why we made our turnkey note sites for web people and stuff like that. You want something bigger? Yeah, we can build you something bigger. But bottom line is you have to have some sort of website. If you don't want to spend any money, go build it yourself. But right now it's, for us, it's $397 to build you a small little site, but people are going to check you out for your contact. And then third, understand that the mentality has changed. It is a courtship process now. And it always was a little bit, but even more so now. So if you're dealing with a note seller or a referral source, when you start looking at what those email correspondence are, or I tend to focus on funnels and what that looks like, there's a courtship. There's an indoctrination period. They have to know, love, and trust you before they're going to execute a deal. And it's more important now. We always felt like it was a relationship business, but it's more important now because they know they can go someplace else. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, they're like, well, I guess I got to put up with this person because I don't know where else to go. They will leave in a heartbeat and go search somebody else because now they're not only more educated, they're educated that they can educate themselves. They'll go find something else. So you need to be aware of that and how to handle that in your communications.
Rick, how do you think technology will play a role in the future of mortgage note investing?
I think it's changing it forever, really. I think it is creating the future. Technology is just really creating the future of mortgage note investing. How long ago was it when you would get your collateral file and spread it out over the table? Yeah. When we started buying notes 7 years ago, the technology wasn't there. And there was some of it there, but it's really advancing now. All the platforms up here are making mortgage note investing easier. Some of the stuff that we're tackling right now are just creating assignments. There's so many assignments. If you ever got one that has a clerical error, yeah, a lot of them, book and pages may be wrong. We're starting a data import right now that we can create that stuff on the fly. It's real time and it's coming directly from public record. Our accuracy is like 99.3%. It's just ridiculous how accurate it is. You don't have to sit there and type in the information. That's just one example. We could really go into the weeds and look at this gets me excited, but like machine learning, monitoring your portfolio, monitoring servicing notes, economic conditions, stuff that we're looking at, 10-year modeling, stuff like that on your portfolio, that stuff just wasn't available at the retail level. It was available high up when you start looking at, the GSEs or something like that, but it was never available to somebody who's a mom and pop investor, which is what we are, the one-off investors. So I think technology is going to make it, it's going to level the playing field, and it's going to give everybody a real fair chance, and you're going to be able to start investing with a higher degree of certainty, and you're going to know what you're getting into.
And I know both of our platforms were ready to roll out the option of buying partials on
Yes.
the platform, so more product types out there.
Yeah, definitely the debt type situation right now. I mean, we're rolling out CFDs within the week, and then partials. So many people love the idea of doing a partial, but I think part of the problem is it's a little difficult in their head. And we're excited to work with Notes Direct on rolling out that product to where it's handled just the way it's handled right now. A regular loan sale, the contracts are generated. There's going to be special calculators. You'll know exactly what you're doing. Be able to transfer the loan right to a partial servicer. Everything will be handled perfectly. So yeah, technology is solving stuff, top to bottom, small stuff, all the way up to the larger pools. Technology is really just advancing this secondary market that's really the retail market, which is growing. It's 20 years ago, it wasn't here, and it was at a higher level. But now, because of technology, it's growing, and it's making it easier for people.
Tracy, others that have tried note listing websites in the past, what makes you think now is a good time for online sites?
So there have been other note listing sites, and they did it poorly, in our opinion. And so that was one of the things we really focused on: is how do you make a system that all of us would personally use as either a seller or a buyer? What would it take? And so one of the things we looked at is that we didn't want to have a lot of tire kickers. We wanted to know what the actual price is that the asset could be sold for, which is why we went with a non-auction format. Another piece was we wanted to see a full due diligence file. We didn't want everybody wasting a lot of time throwing around numbers if they looked at the file and didn't want to go through with the transaction. So we wanted full transparency. And I think that now, because now there's that sort of access to that information on the Notes Direct platform, and also because we have so many people that are buying for themselves individually, and that we're trying to put peer-to-peer, we're trying to put sellers direct with investors. And so in the past, some of the platforms had a lot of problems because they allowed brokers and they clog up the works. And we all believe there's a place for brokers flippers in a transaction. There's no doubt that a lot of us still refer notes and make a fee. But I think on a peer-to-peer platform, you're really you're trying to get sellers direct with investors. And that's something we've always focused on as well. So I think all of those things, now is a good time for platforms. The technology is there, the security is there, and we have a very mature market now. We have investors that want to come in and use their self-directed retirement account and buy for themselves. It's not just people taking it and flipping it off to an institutional investor like it was in the past. So it's a good time, I think, for platforms.
Yeah, let me expound on that just a little bit about the broker role, right? Because sometimes the immediate knee-jerk reaction is, oh, it's going to put the broker out of business because they can go straight. There's still, as Tracy said, there's still a role and a value add that brokers add to it, okay? But it isn't just to take some loan off of a public platform and sell it to an investor that's already buying loans on that platform or whatever, right? You have to have one of two things to the party. You have to have a seller that nobody else knows that you're actually bringing to the dance, right? Or you have to have a passive investor that wants to buy it, that doesn't want to go do the marketing to find inventory, and that's the role you're doing. And we have lots of people on Notes Direct that perform that function and make a lot of money doing it, right? But they're not calling up. I mean, I've had people take loans off Notes Direct, email me a loan, ask me if I wanted to buy it, and I already own it. It happens, even though they signed an NDA and everything else, okay? So you have to follow we talked on the panel earlier about industry standards and, common sense things. I mean, you don't just download a tape off of a platform and blast it out on LinkedIn, all right? That is not what serving a value add role as a broker. You find one or two that fits your investor's box, and you present it to them. You make the offer, and you follow that company's procedure on how you broker a deal on that platform. So I'll get off that rant, and now I'll ask Richard his one question that he wanted me to ask. And Richard, what is your why?
Yeah, I think you told me that you would have already asked me that question, and you did, and thank you very much. Yeah, so I already kind of covered that. It really came down to feeling like I had something to share, that I was organized, I'm a systems guy, I'm an engineer, like Eddie always says, half of us here are engineers. But it really came down to being able to share a system and in a turnkey way, just like these guys that put platforms together, and we've got turnkey website over here and turnkey due diligence, making something simple that otherwise people struggle with. That's really what I did it for.
Well, we can drill down on that for just a minute. We got a couple minutes left. I mean, a lot of times people go to focus groups, masterminds, whatever you want to call them. You sit around in a group of 8 to 10, and they all complain about something, and you're like, oh, I've got a solution that'll fix that. But not many people are just willing to like, hey, what do you need really? Maybe I can develop something. Maybe I can help it. And of course, you're going to monetize it and charge for the time to develop it. But some people, believe it or not, Rick, just keep it to themselves. You know, and they don't want everybody else to know. They got their secret sauce, and you know they're going to have their own platform. So, as all these people I've represented, I mean, they could have developed their site just for themselves. Ray could have said, I'm going to have the best due diligence, data aggregation, and I'm going to be the king of the world on buying assets. And you could have managed yours better than anybody else and not shared it. But it speaks a lot to not only your passion for the note business, but your passion for helping others, right, and the industry as a whole. Because if you're out there doing it, and as Fred and Tracy and I have said, we've been in there a long time. We've known a lot of people, and a lot of the reasons why the people that we know that are still around, as opposed to the ones that aren't still around, is because it wasn't, I've got the secret sauce and you don't, good luck, right? We've worked together on the same company. We've worked as counterparties. You know, we've done special, you're going to run into people over and over again. And I think that's the key point to remember there. So any closing words? What do you think coming up in 2020 that maybe you got some goals that you want to accomplish or things that you think people should focus on?
I would just say not so much a goal for me because I'm pretty clear on my goals. So I would say a goal for you to piggyback what you were saying as far as people that come to these events or masterminds or, you know, they may be involved in, you know, our training or your trainings or somebody else's, stuff like that. The difference, I think, of walking out of those, you walk out of with a lot of good ideas and a lot of things you see you can do. Start setting goals. Nothing replaces going, look, this month I'm going to try this, or next month I'm going to try that. Absent setting that goal and setting a timeline, you just won't do it. You walk out, you're excited, but until it actually turns into a plan and you say, I'm going to do this, every 30 days I'm going to do this, or every 90 days I'm going to do this, where you have to have something concrete. So walk out with something concrete. It doesn't matter what it's from, whether it's sign up, previous session, sign up for a self-directed IRA, or sign up for one of the platforms or whatever. Just walk out with an actual to-do item on several of those things.
Awesome. You guys help me thank the panel for coming up here. Thank you guys. Good job. We'll get mic'd up. All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Fred.